everyone, I'm Captain Logan. Welcome once again to Pop Culture Comics in Overland Park, Kansas. It's time for my comic book picks of the week. Got a lot of stuff to show you this week, so let's get started right now. Here's my DC pick. Here is Justice League International, number 3. I've always liked Dan Jurgens, and it's a real treat to see him writing some of these characters again. He's a master at juggling a ton of characters at once. Instead of putting them all in one place and focusing on 2 or 3 and leaving the rest in the background, he pairs them all up, gives each pair a side mission, and gives us a few pages for each to see how they interact. For the overarching story, some characters are naturally more important than others. This is really Booster Gold's story, the unlikely leader of this team who's maybe too in over his head for the job and doesn't have the total faith of everyone in the group. But in just this issue, even if you read this without the 2 before it, you'll get quite a bit of characterization for everyone. We learn that Rocket Red has the hots for Fire, that Fire joined the team mostly for attention, and that the mysterious August General in Iron isn't wearing a suit, but his skin is, in fact, made of iron. And Jurgens gives the characters I'm more familiar with things to do that are extremely indicative of who they are. I love the exchanges between Booster and Batman. Booster making lame cracks and Batman generally ignoring him, completely all business. And I like how Guy Gardner is the one team member who goes it alone, naturally. And not to give anything away, but he also naturally ends up in the most danger because of it. I really like how this dysfunctional team is coming together and all the politics of putting together a new Justice League. How there's no precedent for anything, so no one's really prepared for what they're facing, and that's really frustrating for them. This isn't a book I was really excited about before the 52, but 3 issues in, it's quite strong, and there's lots and lots going on in just this one issue. And moving on to my Marvel pick, here's Amazing Spider-Man number 673, the epilogue for Spider Island. First off, I have to mention how neat of a choice it was to make the cover of the epilogue a variation of the classic Spider-Man No More cover. This issue does what all epilogues to big story arcs should do, I think. It provides a sense of closure after all the excitement from the Spider Island finale, but it's more than just characters cleaning up after the big crisis. It also sets up the future of the book in a big way, to get the reader excited for what's to come and cement the relevancy of the event in Spider-Man continuity. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a moment here where Peter has a huge decision to make. And it's not immediately clear what he'll do, but it's a pretty breathtaking moment when he does it. I'm very much in the camp that wishes Peter and Mary Jane had never broken up, and I've got to say, I really like what Slott did with her in Spider Island, and especially the dynamic the two of them have in this issue. I also love how the whole population of New York City became a character here, and the new relationship between New York and Spider-Man now that they've all had some time in his shoes. I think Slott was brilliant to have the disease not only give them all powers, but mutate them into man-spiders, not just for the sake of the drama of the story, but also because of what that symbolizes. It means they all saw the very best and the very worst of what it's like to be Spider-Man, the responsibility of having those powers and the terror of not having control of them. I was at a take-it-or-leave-it point before this event with this book, but I'm too curious to see where Slott goes with a lot of elements set up here to quit it now. It looks like Kane's going to play a big role later. I really wonder what's going to happen with Eddie Brock now that he's no longer Anti-Venom, and the slate is virtually completely clean for Peter at this point, though it turns out he made a huge mistake during Spider Island that has potentially enormous consequences that connect all the way back to Civil War, and that's all I'm going to say about that. More and more, it seems like Slott is a master at making connections with bits of continuity spanning the decades in a seamless way that doesn't lose the reader no matter what you've read. If you did read Spider Island, be sure not to skip the prologue. It's very much the true end of the story. And now for my indie pick for the week, here is Blood Red Dragon, number 1. Blood Red Dragon stars a fictionalized version of the real-life Japanese musician Yoshiki, who is given supernatural abilities through an ancient entity after being both attacked and struck by lightning simultaneously at one of his concerts, in order to fight Oblivion, a realm we're told produces weapons forged by dark magic and dark science. Yoshiki's power comes from his music, which awakens the dragon after 3 magical women disguised as the leaders of his fan club reveal themselves, along with an apparent dark minion of Oblivion, who for some reason also wants Yoshiki to embrace the power of the dragon. The series was created by Stan Lee and Yoshiki and produced by Todd McFarlane. I must confess, I don't know Yoshiki's music myself and would probably have a greater appreciation for this comic if I did. But having said that, it is an entertaining read, and it's really weird in a good way. I really love the opening hook, with Yoshiki narrating that he used to use his gifts to entertain, but now he must use them for destruction. And it's a classic, tragic story of the man who loses everything to a higher calling. I like Yoshiki because he doesn't just immediately
immediately embraced this. All he wants to do is continue making his music, and it seems harder for him because his music is precisely what seems to unlock the power. The art is naturally somewhat manga-inspired, and it really feels like an early 90s Image comic, with all the panels that are just a solid color with no background. It's a lot of setup, but I think it has some definite potential.
And finally, big week for Sonic this week, so I felt the need to do this. Here is Sonic the Hedgehog, number 230.
Here comes another epilogue. This one closes out the Genesis arc. Sonic finally has his memories back and Robotnik is trying to reboot the universe. There's some funny commentary here about the current reboot craze, and I'd be surprised if this issue weren't specifically trying to poke fun at DC's New 52. For 4 issues, our heroes were in what appeared to be a rebooted universe that paralleled the early Genesis games, in which they were meeting for the first time, and then a white flash at the end of the last issue, and now everything's back to normal. By toying with it like that, the series is affirming that it has no intention on going back on its long continuity, starting its numbering system over or anything like that. And the whole issue is worth Robotnik's line early on, "Why isn't the cosmic reset button resetting the cosmos?" I love absurd stuff like this. And in true Sonic fashion, the whole issue is pretty much Robotnik talking about his plans and Sonic fighting a bunch of robot versions of himself. But there's a nice little twist on that right at the end. I like that this arc is tied into the Sonic 20th anniversary celebration, and it's smart that the epilogue is out the same week as the Sonic Generations video game. I will say, though, don't be fooled by the cover, which advertises the video game story for Generations. There's a little 5-page backup feature that sets up the game, but there's really no story. The art's pretty, though.
And here's some other stuff I read this week that I thought was fantastic, and you might too. Here is Uncanny X-Men number 1, starting on a really strong note. Mr. Sinister is back. He's got a big, giant, floating head going all over the place. He's doing really strange, crazy things. He's as creepy and bizarre as ever, and the art in this is fantastic. The story's unpredictable. This is a really good time to start in on X-Men titles, and I really recommend this one. And also for Marvel this week, here is Fear Itself 7.1. This is Captain America dealing with the death of Bucky, written by Brubaker. And then we've got Shame Itself, which is a comedy farce making fun of Fear Itself and the Marvel Universe in general. From DC this week, there's a beautiful hardcover graphic novel called Batman Noel, written by the same guy who did Joker. This has been advertised in a lot of the 52 books recently. It's a Christmas Carol overlaid on top of a modern Batman story. They're paralleling each other. It's really interesting, and the art is just exquisite. And for Marvel Select, there is a fantastic Red Skull figure that just came out this week. This is the companion to the Captain America First Avenger figure that they put out last month. I also wanted to mention that I had a letter published in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 last week from IDW. If you have this, or you're planning on getting it, flip to the back into the letters pages. It's on the first page. It's toward the bottom. I have a letter. It's signed Captain Logan, and they actually responded to it, which is really neat. So check that out if you have it. And thanks a lot for watching. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Pop Culture Comics right here in Overland Park, Kansas. That's where I am at this very moment, and it's my favorite place to get comic books. If you happen to be watching this on the Pop Culture website and you've never been to Geekvolution on YouTube, be sure to check us out. You can go to YouTube/Geekvolution, or you can go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Geekvolution, where I do little micro comic reviews. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.